My name is Clara Corbin, and I am 36 years old. My earliest memories are scented with sawdust, linseed oil, and the crisp, clean smell of blueprints unfurling on a vast drafting table. Our family home, nestled in the rolling, oak-studded hills outside of Portland, was my father's first masterpiece. It was a house of strong lines, wide windows that drank in the light, and foundations sunk so deep into the Oregon soil you felt it was a part of the earth itself. My father, Robert Corbin, was an architect of considerable renown, a man who built things that were meant to last: libraries, concert halls, museums, structures of steel and glass and stone that cast long, confident shadows. The Corbin name was a legacy built on tangible things, on creating order and beauty from the chaos of the physical world. This was the inheritance my younger brother, Liam, was born to claim. From the moment he could hold a pencil, he was sketching, his lines mimicking the confident strokes of our father. He was the golden child, the natural heir. While I was praised for my quiet diligence in school, Liam was celebrated for the bridges he built with wooden blocks, the fantastical treehouses he designed in his notebooks. His decision to study architecture at Cornell was marked by a party that felt less like a family gathering and more like a coronation. He was following the path, continuing the legacy. He was building the future, one solid, visible beam at a time. My own passions, however, were for a different kind of architecture, the invisible kind. While Liam was fascinated by load-bearing walls and vaulted ceilings, I was captivated by the elegant, unseen structures of data, the silent choreography of algorithms, and the nascent, humming consciousness of artificial intelligence. I saw a world built not of concrete and steel, but of logic and light, a world whose foundations were not buried in the earth, but woven into the very fabric of our digital existence. When I announced my intention to pursue a doctorate in computational theory and join Ethelred Innovations, a pioneering AI firm in Seattle, the silence in our grand, light-filled living room was heavier than any stone. My father, a man who could command a construction site with a single gesture, looked at me with a confusion that bordered on pity. "It's just code, Clara," he said, his voice gentle but dismissive. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass, the firelight catching in the facets. "Lines on a screen. It's not the same as building something real, something people can touch and see and live in." My mother, Helen, ever the peacemaker, placed a soft hand on my arm. Her worry was a familiar, comforting weight. "It's such a demanding field, dear, especially for a woman. All those hours in front of a computer. When will you have time to meet someone? To build a life?" To them, my life's work was abstract, ephemeral. It was a desk job, a support role for the real world that my father and brother were so busy constructing. They couldn't see the architecture in what I did, the intricate systems I designed, the complex problems I solved, the digital worlds I was helping to build. Due to the labyrinthine non-disclosure agreements that governed my work at Ethelred, I couldn't explain it to them. I couldn't tell them that the lines on a screen I wrote were creating frameworks that would one day manage global supply chains, predict pandemics, and redefine the very nature of human knowledge. So, a quiet chasm formed between us, growing wider with each passing year. At Thanksgiving, Liam would unroll the blueprints for his latest project, a sleek, sustainable art museum or a community center for a low-income neighborhood. Our parents would beam, their pride a palpable warmth in the room. I would listen, ask questions, and offer my genuine admiration, for Liam was truly talented. When they turned to me, their questions were always the same. "How are things in Seattle? Still enjoying your computer work? Still staring at screens all day?" Liam would sometimes ask, a teasing but sharp edge to his voice. "You should come see what we're doing on the waterfront. We're building something that will change the city's skyline." Little did he know, I had spent the last 2 years of my life leading a clandestine team on a project codenamed Chimera, a system so revolutionary that its success would change not just a skyline, but the entire landscape of modern technology. My weekends were a blur of encrypted calls across time zones, my nights spent troubleshooting systems whose failure could cost our company billions. I carried the weight of this immense responsibility in silence, the burden a secret I couldn't share. My mother's concern evolved into a gentle, persistent disappointment. Anna from next door is getting married this spring, she'd mentioned during our weekly calls. Such a lovely boy, a lawyer. She still finds time to volunteer at the food bank, you know. The unspoken message was clear. My career was an obstacle, a strange and lonely path that was keeping me from the real milestones of a woman's life. Each visit home became an exercise in quiet endurance. I would listen to the praise heaped upon Liam, help my mother in the kitchen while she lamented my single status, and watch my father's pride in his son, a pride I knew I could never earn in the same way. My own successes, the patents filed under the company's name, the promotions to positions I couldn't name, the complex systems brought to life, were invisible ghosts at the family table. By the time I was 33, I was the head of Ethelred's Advanced Concepts Division, a title that meant nothing to them. I was leading a team of the brightest minds in the world, but in my family's eyes, I was still just Clara, the quiet daughter with the computer hobby. The breaking point, if such a slow erosion can have a single point of fracture, came 3 years ago. My father was receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Institute of Architects. The ceremony was a grand affair in Chicago. I couldn't go. The Chimera project was in its most critical phase, a delicate, global rollout that required my constant, undivided attention. A single miscalculation could have led to a catastrophic cascade failure. Liam's call the next day was cold and sharp. He's given his life to his work, Clara. He built our world. And you couldn't be bothered to show up? What email was so important that you had to abandon your own father on his biggest night? I couldn't tell him that I was in a secure data center in London, that I hadn't slept in 72 hours, that the system I was managing would protect financial markets and secure infrastructure for millions, including, in some small way, the very world he and my father cherished. All I could say was, "I'm sorry, Liam." I couldn't get away. I absorbed his anger and disappointment, folding it into the quiet, insulated space where I kept all the other misunderstandings. From that day on, we were less like siblings and more like distant relatives, bound by a shared history but separated by an unbridgeable present. My work was my sanctuary and my prison, my achievements a secret garden no one else was allowed to see. The email from my mother arrived on a Tuesday morning, its subject line bright and cheerful, "Big news for Liam." It was a foreword, of course, a press release from the prestigious Pacific Architectural Guild. Liam had been named Innovator of the Year for his design of a groundbreaking new library on the Seattle waterfront, a beautiful, wave-like structure of glass and reclaimed timber. The awards gala would be held at the Cascade Hall, a historic, opulent venue downtown. The whole family will be there, Mom's note at the top read. Dad is going to say a few words. You must come. 7 p.m. black tie. It was not an invitation, it was a summons. I was to be present, a silent, supportive figure in the background, another face in the crowd celebrating the real architect in the family. I stared at the screen, a familiar mix of emotions swirling within me. I was genuinely proud of Liam. The library was a stunning achievement, a testament to his vision and talent. But beneath the pride was the dull, chronic ache of being perpetually unseen, of my own life's work being a footnote in the grand narrative of the Corbin family legacy. That evening, as I sat in my minimalist apartment overlooking the glittering expanse of Lake Union, my secure line, the one reserved for the highest levels of company communication, buzzed to life. The caller ID simply read, Sterling. Clara, Arthur Sterling's voice was as calm and resonant as ever. He was the founder and chairman of Ethelred, a legendary figure in the tech world, a man whose vision had shaped the digital age. He was also one of the few people on Earth who understood the true scope of my work. Arthur, I replied, my posture straightening instinctively. I hear congratulations are in order for the Corbin family, he said, a warm smile in his voice. A new library on the waterfront, I believe. A fine piece of work. I was momentarily stunned. Yes. Thank you. How did you know? I make it my business to know about exceptional things, he said. Which brings me to the real reason for my call. The board has approved my proposal. We're taking Project Chimera public. My breath caught in my throat. For 5 years, Chimera had been the most closely guarded secret at Ethelred, an autonomous logistics and resource management AI that was decades ahead of its time. Its existence was known only to a handful of people. "We're unveiling it at the end of the month," he continued. "But I feel a more personal recognition is in order for its chief architect. I've been looking for the right opportunity to inaugurate a new company honor, the Sterling Vanguard Award, for an innovation that fundamentally alters the technological landscape. I can think of no one more deserving than you, Clara." I was speechless, a torrent of emotions, gratitude, shock, validation, rendering me silent. "There is a gala at the Cascade Hall in 2 weeks' time," he said, and I could hear the shrewd, playful glint in his tone. "I believe you may already have it on your calendar. I thought it would be a fitting venue to present you with your award." The pieces clicked into place. He knew. Of course, he knew. He knew about my family, about Liam, about the quiet narrative of my life. The irony was breathtaking. At the very event meant to solidify my brother's place as the family's celebrated innovator, my own hidden world was about to be brought into the light. "Your family is unaware of your role, I presume?" he asked gently. "Completely," I whispered. "They think I'm a mid-level data analyst." He chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. "Well, my dear, I believe they're in for quite an education. I think it's time the Corbin family understood what true architecture looks like in the 21st century." After the call ended, I sat in the darkness for a long time, the city lights painting shifting patterns on my walls. A part of me, the part that still craved their approval, wanted to call them, to prepare them. But another, quieter part, a part that had been forged in years of silent self-reliance, knew this was a moment that had to unfold on its own terms. I had spent my life accommodating their perceptions of me. For one night, they would have to accommodate my reality. The night of the gala arrived with a soft Seattle drizzle that coated the city in a diamond-like sheen. The Cascade Hall was a symphony of light and sound, its Gilded Age opulence a stark contrast to the sleek, modern world of technology and architecture it was celebrating. The air hummed with the quiet confidence of the city's elite, tech moguls, celebrated artists, philanthropists, and politicians. I had my driver drop me off a block away, wanting to walk the final stretch alone, to feel the cool night air on my skin before stepping into the warmth and the inevitable storm. I had dressed with care, not for them, but for myself. My gown was a simple, midnight blue silk that fell in a clean, architectural line. It was the uniform of a woman who knew her own mind. As I approached the grand entrance, I saw the check-in tables, manned by polite, efficient ushers with glowing tablets. "Name, please," a young woman asked with a practiced smile. "Clara Corbin," I said. She scrolled through her list. Her smile tightened. "I'm sorry, I don't have a Clara Corbin here." "I'm with the Corbin party," I explained, my voice calm, the old, familiar feeling of invisibility washing over me. "Liam Corbin's sister." She scrolled again, her brow furrowed. "I have Robert and Helen Corbin and Liam and his wife, Anya. But no Clara." "I'm so sorry." My heart constricted. It wasn't an oversight. It was a choice. In his moment of triumph, my brother had not thought to include me. Just as I was about to step aside, to fade into the background as I had done so many times before I saw them. My family was gliding through the entrance, my father looking distinguished in his tuxedo, my mother elegant in silver, Liam and Anya radiant, soaking in the congratulations of passers-by. Liam caught my eye as he passed. He didn't show concern or surprise, but a flicker of something else, a smug, familiar pity. "Trouble with the RSVP, Clara?" he called over, not breaking his stride. "Typical digital mess, I suppose. You'll get it sorted." They swept inside, leaving me alone at the threshold, the polite usher now looking at me with distinct discomfort. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step out of the line." I took a deep breath, about to turn away, when a sleek, black town car pulled silently to the curb. The door opened and Arthur Sterling emerged, his silver hair catching the light. He exuded an aura of quiet, unassailable authority. The security detail around the entrance subtly straightened. "Clara, my dear," he said, his voice cutting through the ambient chatter. He walked directly to me, extending a hand. I was beginning to worry. I trust you haven't been waiting long. The usher's eyes widened. Mr. Sterling. Arthur fixed the young woman with a look that was not unkind, but held the weight of absolute command. Is there an issue with my Chief of Innovation entering her own award ceremony? Chief of... No, sir. Of course not, sir, the usher stammered, her face flushing. My apologies, Miss Corbin. You weren't on my list. An oversight, I'm sure, Arthur said smoothly. He offered me his arm. Shall we? Our table awaits, and I believe we have a rather captive audience tonight. As he escorted me through the grand doors, I felt a tectonic shift occur, not in the room, but within myself. It was the feeling of a lifetime of being on the outside, looking in, suddenly and irrevocably ending. Across the vast, crowded hall, I saw my family being seated at a large table near the front. Arthur led me past them, to a smaller, more prominent table directly beside the stage, where the CEOs of Microsoft and Amazon were already seated. They both rose as we approached. Clara, wonderful to see you, one of them said, shaking my hand. Heard whispers about Chimera. Can't wait to hear the details. From across the small divide, I could feel my family's gaze. I saw the confusion on my father's face, the bewildered, frozen smile on my mother's, and the look of utter, dawning disbelief on Liam's. He was trying to reconcile the sister he thought he knew, the quiet, background analyst, with the woman being treated as an equal by the most powerful men in the city. The carefully constructed narrative of his world was beginning to fracture. The ceremony began. Speeches were made, lesser awards were given. Then came Liam's moment. He walked to the stage with the easy confidence of a man who has never had to question his own importance. The citation for his award was read, detailing the brilliance of his library design, its harmony with the environment, its service to the community. It was all true. He was a creator, a builder. He accepted the heavy glass trophy and stepped to the microphone. He thanked his mentors, his team, and then his family. I want to thank my father, Robert Corbin, he said, his voice resonant with emotion. He taught me that the goal of an architect is to build things that last, to leave a mark of beauty and permanence on the world. Everything I know about creating, I learned from him. My father's eyes glistened with pride. To my mother, Helen, for her unwavering support and for creating a home that was my first and most important inspiration. And to my incredible wife, Anya, whose belief in me is the foundation upon which I build everything. I sat perfectly still, a silent observer. I waited for my name, for even a small, cursory acknowledgement. And to my sister, Clara. It never came. He concluded his speech and returned to his table, bathed in the warm glow of applause and his family's adoration. The omission shouldn't have hurt, not after all these years. But it did. The public erasure felt like a final, definitive severing. As the applause faded, Arthur Sterling was introduced. He walked to the stage not with the bravado of a performer, but with the quiet gravity of a scholar. The room fell silent. Good evening, he began. We are here tonight to celebrate architecture, the art of designing and constructing buildings. But I would like to speak for a moment about a different kind of architecture. An invisible architecture that, more and more, underpins our entire world. Its structures are not made of steel or glass, but of logic. Its foundations are not concrete, but pure information. Its architects are a new kind of builder, and their work, often done in silence and secrecy, is creating the world of tomorrow. I felt my heart begin to beat a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. Arthur's gaze swept the room and found me. For 5 years, a small, brilliant team at Ethelred, working under the highest levels of secrecy, has been building such a structure. A project known as Chimera. Today, I am proud to announce that Chimera is not just a success, it is a paradigm shift, an artificial intelligence that will revolutionize global logistics, resource management, and predictive analysis for generations to come. A murmur rippled through the audience. I could see my father leaning forward, his brow furrowed in concentration. My mother was watching him, her own confusion mirroring his. An achievement of this magnitude is the work of many, Arthur continued, his voice rising with a formal, deliberate cadence. But every great structure has a chief architect. The visionary who conceives of the whole, who guides the construction, who carries the ultimate responsibility. It is my distinct honor and a profound personal pleasure to introduce you to her now." He paused, letting the silence hang in the air, his eyes moving from me to my family's table. The creator of Project Chimera, the head of our Advanced Concepts Division, and the inaugural recipient of the Sterling Vanguard Award, Ms. Clara Corbin. For a moment, there was only a stunned silence. Then, the applause started, not the polite applause for Liam, but a thunderous, explosive ovation. The tech titans at my table were on their feet instantly, and their recognition sparked a chain reaction throughout the hall. These were people who understood the magnitude of what had just been announced. Only my family remained seated, frozen in a tableau of shock. I rose from my seat and walked toward the stage. Each step was deliberate, measured. I could feel Liam's eyes on me, his face a mask of disbelief rapidly crumbling into something that looked like horror. As I climbed the few stairs to the stage, I felt as if I were ascending from a long, deep dive, breaking the surface into the light and air. Arthur Sterling stood waiting for me, holding a sleek, abstract sculpture of interlocking silver rings. As the applause finally began to subside, he spoke again. For her vision, her leadership, and for building an invisible architecture that will shape the future of our world, Ethelred Innovations proudly presents this award to Clara Corbin. He handed the heavy award to me, his hands warm and steady on mine. "The world is finally seeing what I have seen for years," he whispered, for my ears only. "Well done, Clara." I stepped to the microphone, the warmth of the stage lights on my face. I looked out at the sea of faces, and my gaze settled, just for a moment, on my family. My father's mouth was slightly agape. My mother had her hand over her own, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Liam's face was ashen. "Thank you, Arthur," I said, my voice quiet but clear, carrying through the silent hall. "This honor belongs not just to me, but to the incredible team I have the privilege of leading. They are the unsung builders, the quiet architects of this new world." I paused, letting my words settle. "In my field," I continued, my eyes finding Liam's, "we understand that our work is often invisible. Our greatest successes are silent. We build foundations that no one sees, structures that must remain hidden. We accept that our names may never be attached to our greatest creations, that even our families may not understand the nature of our work." I allowed myself a small, sad smile. "But we build nonetheless. We create, we innovate, and we serve, in our own way, a commitment to building a better, smarter, more connected world. This award is for all of us who build in the shadows." As I finished, the hall rose to its feet again. This time, I saw my father rise with them, slowly, as if in a daze, pulling my mother to her feet beside him. Only Liam remained in his chair, staring at me, a stranger on a stage, as if he had never seen me before in his life. The public revelation was complete. But the private reckoning, I knew, was only just beginning. The reception was a blur of motion and congratulations. The air, thick with perfume and the clinking of glasses, felt surreal. Colleagues and industry rivals alike approached me, their words of praise a stark contrast to the years of silence. "A masterstroke," Clara, the CEO of a major venture capital firm, said, his eyes alight with curiosity. "Chimera changes everything. We never saw it coming." I navigated these conversations with the practiced composure my role demanded, but a part of my awareness was tethered to the far corner of the room where my family stood like a small, isolated island. My father looked lost, his usual air of command replaced by a profound uncertainty. My mother clutched her small evening bag as if it were a life raft, her gaze darting around the room, landing on me, then flitting away again. And Liam. He stood with his back to the wall, his arms crossed, his face a thunderous mask. He had not moved since the ceremony ended. Finally, excusing myself from a conversation with a state senator, I took a deep breath and began to walk towards them. It felt like crossing a border into a foreign country. Liam saw me coming and pushed himself off the wall, meeting me halfway. His wife, Anya, trailed nervously behind him. "Clara," he said, his voice low and tight. He didn't use a title, Just my name, but it was laden with a decade of unspoken resentment, now supercharged with fresh shock. Or should I call you the Chief of Innovation? I'm not sure I'm on a first-name basis with Ethelred's secret weapon. Liam, I said, my voice even and calm. I would not meet his anger with my own. Congratulations on your award. The library is a beautiful design. Don't, he cut me off, his voice a hiss. Don't do that. Don't patronize me. Not tonight. He gestured vaguely at the opulent room. What is all this? Advanced Concepts Division? What does that even mean? You've been lying to us. For years. My father and mother had drifted closer, drawn into the vortex of our confrontation. Son, not here, my father murmured, his voice lacking its usual authority. Then where, Dad? Liam shot back, his eyes flashing. In the car on the way home, where we can all pretend this didn't happen. When does she ever have time for us anyway? She's too busy building her secret empire. My mother reached out, her fingers brushing my arm. Her touch was hesitant, uncertain. Clara, darling, we don't understand. We're your family. How could you keep all of this from us? The raw pain in her voice pricked at my composure. Perhaps, I suggested, my voice softer than I intended, we could find somewhere quiet to talk. Why? Liam's laugh was harsh. You seem to be enjoying the spotlight. Why hide in the shadows now? Before the scene could escalate further, a figure appeared at my elbow. It was Arthur Sterling. His presence was a calming balm on the turbulent emotional waters. Liam, he said, addressing my brother with a polite but firm nod. Anya, a pleasure to meet you both. Your library is a triumph of form and function. He then turned his gaze to me. Clara, the small conservatory off the main hall is empty. I've asked the staff to ensure you won't be disturbed. Family conversations are best had in private, don't you think? It was a suggestion phrased as a statement of fact. Liam, despite his anger, straightened instinctively, chastened by a power he recognized but couldn't challenge. Yes, sir. I gave Arthur a look of silent gratitude. Thank you, Arthur. The conservatory was a small, glass-walled room filled with orchids and ferns, a pocket of humid tranquility. The moment the door closed, sealing us off from the noise of the reception, Liam rounded on me. 15 years, Clara, he began, his voice shaking with a mixture of anger and hurt. 15 years you let us think you were, what? A glorified coder? A support staffer? You let me lecture you about building things, about making a real impact. His voice cracked. Do you have any idea how foolish I feel? How many times I dismissed your work, your life? I was bound by non-disclosure agreements, Liam, I said, the words feeling thin and inadequate. It wasn't a personal deception. Oh, please, he scoffed. You could have told us something. You could have told us you were important, that you were leading a team. You let me think I was the successful one, the one carrying the Corbin legacy, while you were outbuilding us all in a way we couldn't even comprehend. My father sank onto a wrought iron bench, looking older than I had ever seen him. Clara, help me understand, he said, his voice heavy with confusion. All this time, we worried about you. We thought you were adrift. You thought I was a disappointment. I finished for him, the words tasting like rust in my mouth. You thought I hadn't measured up because my work wasn't something you could see and touch. You made that clear, Dad. From the very beginning. That's not true, my mother protested, though her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? I looked from one to the other, the years of quiet slights coalescing into a single, sharp point of truth. Dad, you called my work lines on a screen. Liam, you've spent a decade making jokes about me, staring at a computer. And Mom, you've treated my career like a temporary illness I needed to recover from so I could get on with the real business of getting married and having children. A heavy silence filled the small room, thick with the scent of damp earth and unspoken truths. We didn't know, my father said finally, his voice raspy. You didn't have to know the details of Project Chimera to respect my choices, I countered, my voice gaining strength. You just had to trust me. But you assumed. You assumed that because my path was different from yours, it was lesser. You assumed that the only architecture that mattered was the kind made of steel and stone. Liam paced the small space like a caged animal. So all those times I came home, crowing about my projects, my awards, you were already a senior executive, leading a secret division, silently judging my small-scale ambitions. It wasn't like that, I said, shaking my head. I was proud of you. I still am. It was never a competition. It wasn't for you, maybe, he shot back. Because you'd already won. From where I'm standing, it looks like you enjoyed letting us believe a lie. You built this whole other life and never let us in. I followed the protocols I was legally and ethically bound to, I stated, my voice steady, falling back on the discipline that had been my constant companion for years. Operational security is absolute. It doesn't make exceptions for family. You, of all people, should understand the importance of professional integrity, Liam. He fell silent at that, because he knew I was right. He, too, had projects with confidentiality clauses. I tried to help you, my father mumbled, looking at his hands. I called a friend at a firm in Portland, asked if they had an opening in their IT department. I thought you were stuck. The absurdity of it, my father, the great architect, trying to pull strings to get his daughter, the head of one of the world's most advanced technology divisions, an entry-level IT job, was so poignant it almost made me laugh. I know you meant well, Dad. But why let it go on for so long, my mother asked, her eyes pleading. Your promotions, your title. You could have told us that. And would it have changed anything? I asked her quietly. Or would you still have believed my work was less important than Liam's? Would you still have seen me as the daughter who took the wrong turn? The question landed between them, unanswered. And in their silence, I had my answer. They would have known my rank, but not my value. Liam stopped pacing. You let me make an absolute fool of myself tonight, he said, his voice raw. My speech. I didn't even mention you. In front of all those people who clearly know how important you are. And what would you have me do, Liam? I asked, my patience finally fraying. Stand up in the middle of your speech and announce my security clearance? Correct you in front of your colleagues? I have spent my entire adult life making myself smaller in your presence so as not to upset the family narrative. I chose not to do that tonight. The bluntness of the word smaller seemed to strike him physically. He flinched. My father rose from the bench and took a tentative step toward me. I had never seen him look so uncertain, so devoid of the blueprint that had guided his entire life. Clara, he began, then stopped, searching for the right words. I am so incredibly proud. Of course I am. But I am deeply ashamed. Ashamed that I created a home where you felt your brilliance had to be hidden. That we made you feel less. It was the most vulnerable I had ever seen him. It was the closest my father would ever come to an apology. Thank you, Dad, I said, the words a simple acknowledgement of a crack opening in a wall that had stood for decades. My mother joined him, her hand finding mine, her grip firm this time. We have a daughter we don't even know, she whispered, her tears starting anew. Liam stood apart, his anger finally dissolving into a kind of weary resignation. I need to know one thing, he said, his voice barely a whisper. All those years, were you laughing at me? It was the heart of his pain. Not that I had surpassed him, but that I had witnessed his unwitting arrogance and secretly scorned him for it. No, Liam, I said, and it was the absolute truth. I was never laughing. I was just trying to hold my own world together while respecting yours. A soft knock came at the conservatory door. Arthur's assistant peeked in. Miss Corbin, my apologies. Mr. Sterling sends his regrets for the interruption, but the German Chancellor's envoy is asking for a private word before he leaves. The intrusion of my other life, the one with global stakes and political implications, was jarring. My family stared at me, this new, incomprehensible reality solidifying before their eyes. You have to go, my father said. It was not a question. It was a recognition. I moved toward the door. This conversation isn't over, I said, echoing Liam's earlier sentiment. I turned back to look at them one last time. My father, trying to redraw the blueprints of his own daughter, my mother, grappling with a love that had been blind to the truth, and my brother, whose world had been turned completely upside down, forced to see his sister not as a shadow, but as a formidable light. No, I said softly, to myself as much as to them. It's just beginning. 6 months later, The Pacific Northwest was shedding its winter gray for the tentative, vibrant green of spring. I was at my parents' home, sitting on the wide stone patio that overlooked the Willamette Valley. The air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of damp earth and blooming dogwood. A comfortable quiet settled between my father and me, a new kind of silence, one not of distance but of contemplation. On the table between us sat two objects, a small, exquisitely detailed model of Liam's award-winning library, and a new piece, a delicate, intricate sculpture of interlocking glass and light that I had commissioned from a local artist. It was an abstract representation of a key algorithm from the Chimera project, and my father had placed it beside the model of Liam's library on the living room mantelpiece. Two different forms of architecture, two different legacies, finally given equal space. The months since the gala had been a slow, careful process of excavation and rebuilding. There were long phone calls, tearful confessions, and a weekend visit from Liam alone, without the buffer of his wife or parents. He had shown up at my apartment in Seattle, not with anger, but with a humbled, earnest curiosity. He had brought books on AI theory and 100 questions. We had talked for hours, not as rivals or as the golden child and the shadow, but simply as a brother and sister trying to find their way back to each other. I was so wrapped up in my own definition of success, he had admitted, staring out at the flotilla of houseboats on Lake Union, that I couldn't see that you were running a completely different and, frankly, much bigger race. Now, sitting with my father, I felt the last vestiges of the old tension finally recede. He picked up the glass sculpture, turning it over in his hands, his architect's eye tracing its complex patterns. I used to believe that strength was in permanence, he said, his voice reflective. In things that could withstand time and weather. Stone, steel. But this, he gestured with the sculpture, this has a different kind of strength. It's flexible, adaptable. It changes the world without ever being seen. He looked at me, his eyes clear with a new understanding. I was wrong, Clara. I spent so long looking at the buildings, I forgot to appreciate the design. My mother came out with a tray of iced tea, her movements lighter than I'd seen them in years. She had stopped asking about my love life and started asking about my work, about the ethics of AI, about my team, about the challenges of leading in a male-dominated industry. She was trying to learn the language of my world, and her effort was a bridge across the chasm that had separated us. The front door opened, and Liam walked out onto the patio, a genuine, easy smile on his face. "General Clara," he said, giving me a mock salute, a private joke we'd developed. "Captain Liam," I returned with a smile. He sat down, and the conversation flowed easily, weaving between his new project, a pedestrian bridge in Portland, and my upcoming trip to testify before a congressional committee on technology policy. There was a new balance, a new respect. The hierarchy was gone, replaced by a mutual appreciation for our different, but equally valid, contributions. Later, as the sun began to dip below the coastal range, painting the sky in soft hues of rose and gold, I found myself thinking about the long, lonely years of my ascent. For so long, I had told myself that my family's approval didn't matter, that my self-worth was a fortress I had built for myself, independent of their validation. And that was true. I had learned to be my own measure, to find pride in the quiet satisfaction of a problem solved, a system perfected, a team successfully led. That internal compass had been my salvation. But as I sat there, surrounded by the gentle warmth of my family's newfound understanding, I realized the cost of that solitary strength. The peace I felt now was not the triumphant peace of having finally won their approval. It was the deeper, more profound peace of being truly seen. It was the relief of laying down a burden I hadn't even fully realized I was carrying, the burden of being incomplete in the eyes of those I loved. My journey had not been about forcing them to see my value. It had been about me holding onto my own value until they were ready to see it for themselves. The recognition, when it came, was not a victory but a homecoming. As I drove back to Seattle that evening, the city lights glittering ahead of me like a promise, I knew that our family story was not over. The scars of our long misunderstanding would remain, faint lines on the landscape of our relationships. But they were no longer open wounds. They were reminders of a difficult journey that had led us, finally, to a place of grace. I had won the battle for my own self-respect long before that night at the Cascade Hall. I had won it in the quiet, lonely hours in data centers, in the difficult decisions that no one else would ever know about, in the steadfast belief in the importance of my own invisible architecture. The world's recognition, and my family's, was a beautiful, welcome light, but it was not the source of my own. That light, I had learned, had to come from within. And I realized, with a quiet sense of peace that settled deep in my soul, that it always had.